Alright, so I recently finished Horizon Zero Dawn. So here's me playing through a bit of the Frozen Wilds DLC. We're going to talk about the game. Wound up hitting some good timing, I guess, since they announced right when I was finishing up the game pretty much that they were going to be remastering the game. Well, not good timing because, like a lot of people, I definitely agree that it didn't need it. But hey, I guess a lot of people are talking about the game in series now. That and the Lego game coming out too. That's one of the reasons why I decided to check out the game finally. I just thought the Lego spin-off was just so out there. And I'm not necessarily super interested in a Lego game, but sort of seeing, the groundwork that inspired this strange crossover and a general good-looking series Sony's been pushing a lot lately, that I could finally play too, because I haven't bought a Sony home console. Well, technically ever, because the PS1 I have was from family. And the other Sony platforms I have are their portable consoles. So I've definitely been really happy to see some of their games hit PC so I can finally check them out. There's definitely, some newer games and a handful of other series that never really properly hit some of their portable consoles. I'm probably going to compare this game a bit to Zelda, particularly Breath of the Wild, particularly because I saw a lot of comparisons to it when this game came out. This game actually came out a little before Breath of the Wild, if I remember correctly. I remember getting a little jealous, I'm not going to lie, just with how much I was looking forward to Breath of the Wild and how long that took to actually come out. And then, some people got to experience a little something like it that I couldn't necessarily do without breaking the bank. And it's kind of funny because it kind of went full circle, because Tears of the Kingdom, the sequel to Breath of the Wild, is about a year old at this point. And I played through it a little bit, maybe about a quarter of the way through. I think I reached the second dungeon. And I don't know, the honeymoon phase ended, and I'm just not super thrilled with the game, honestly. Like, yeah, it did some new creative things that were fun to mess around with for a little bit. But when you sort of move on, like a lot of people said, it feels like an expansion of Breath of the Wild, which under normal circumstances is fine, but the fact that it took longer to come out, I pre-ordered it early, so I got it for the same price, but the fact that they raised the price, and now you're sitting there thinking, like, shit, it's going to be a decade now instead of 5-ish years at least before you sort of get that sort of fresh experience and world like you had in Breath of the Wild. Because, the Sky World wasn't all connected and kind of had to go back and forth with the mainland that you already experienced last time around. And then the underground, I just kind of found personally to not be as well designed and a little boring. So that was a little side tangent, but basically I'm kind of in the mood for something like Breath of the Wild, since Tears of the Kingdom didn't really scratch that itch like I was hoping it would. So this and Genshin Impact were particularly on my radar recently. I might try Genshin when it hits Xbox. Was kind of waiting for a Switch release, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And even if it happens with the next Nintendo console, I don't know how early I'm going to be adopting it either. So, yeah, there are similarities obviously between the games, but they are a lot different in a lot of ways too. Like, if you haven't played this game, something that you'll probably enjoy, since I feel like most people don't like the weapon durability of Breath of the Wild, is that doesn't exist here. Here you're mainly dealing with different mods for the equipment you have. I'll admit I could have been a bit better with managing that. For whatever reason, I tend to save my resources for later. I don't want to invest in a particular item and then find a better one, shortly later. Kind of forgetting that I should probably just trust the game to scale the modifications accordingly, which it did. So I just had to shit ton left that I probably should have used earlier. And it's just an entirely different feel and strategy to not have to worry about, how worn out your weapons are and that. I personally don't find one better than the other, but from what I gather, the general consensus is more in favor of not dealing with that. Collecting your other resources is a bit different here too. Like you have a few main collectibles, and then you immediately just kind of pick flowers for the rest. And seeing them all pop up, I sort of realized that, like, I spent a lot of the game doing that, because I'm someone who can't really let things go, especially when you have the icon, hey, over here, collect me. Breath of the Wild, you can definitely get a bit more creative with the different collectibles scattered throughout the world. I don't know what it says about me, but I did kind of miss chests in this game, and the thrill of finding a rare item in one after the defeat of only finding a couple arrows and several others. The combat, though, and the general physics just feels it's a whole other experience with this game compared to Breath of the Wild. It feels little to nothing alike. A lot more focus on stealth, I feel like. Maybe a little more on ranged combat. There's other traps and stuff you can set up too, but I just never really got into that. I mainly took the approach of trying to shoot the shiny things off the robots. And if I sense a particular pattern where there's an opening, or if I just get frustrated or bored with shooting arrows, maybe there's only a small part left to knock out, then I'll switch to more of a melee focus. Or at least that's more how I ended the game. I may have switched up, been a little more melee focused in the beginning. And then, of course, not realize till close to the end of the game that some of the parts I was shooting off were weapons that can be used to do massive damage to the enemies I was fighting. It's funny, too, because I noticed sometimes there would be something sitting around after a battle. I think just general heavy weapons is what they were called, and I just kind of thought, I must have missed that when I was fighting. I was too focused on the fight. Not realizing, I think he may have even been when I started the DLC, when I knocked something off and I'm like, oh, that's where those all came from. That could have made things quite a bit easier, maybe, efficiently using traps and that. In certain arrows, I mainly stuck to the hard arrows. Except for with the Glinthawks, I think they were called, the flying machines, because the fire arrows are really effective against them, getting them out of the air. I will admit I did cheat at some point, so you can switch your difficulty at any point. I was mainly playing on easy, and I did defeat each machine at least once on easy, but there were some points where it's like, damn, I'm still replenishing my resources, or this fight, I did it not that long ago, and it took forever, and it wasn't the most fun. Or I shouldn't say that. Most of them were fun, but maybe there's just a little frustration towards the end. So I'm just like, fuck it, I'll take the machine out quick on story mode. The only thing I wish is that they took off a little more health when you're in story mode difficulty, because it's just like a sliver. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's not the point. But like I said, I still like sort of dodging and trying to challenge myself to lose the least amount of health as possible. But like I said, you can sort of just brain dead spam the heavy attack. Did that for, just some of the more end game tougher machines. Except the Deathbringer. I thought the Deathbringer fights were all pretty fun. It didn't get overly frustrating. Exploration and collecting stuff is super fun. Once again, just with the physics, different feel from Breath of the Wild. I will admit, very similar to Halo Infinite. Another, game with a big open world and different tasks that I liked going around and completing. I just couldn't bring myself to do the scattered text, audio, background collectibles. There's just so many of them, and the reward, I'm just not into the whole diving deep into the lore of the world. What we get in, story and side missions is plenty. I mean, it's there if you like that kind of thing, but it's just not something I've really ever brought myself to do as much as I may like some games. And it does pain me a little bit that I didn't do it because of how much I enjoyed this game. This was one of the first games, too, that I sort of noticed the yellow paint problem I see some people complain about. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I kind of get it. You want there to be some direction. But at the same time, I feel like they could make it a little more subtle. At the same time, this is coming from the person not on the main campaign, but with one of the collectibles, I did miss one of the things. It was like sort of above more of where I was looking. So I had to go through one of the bigger dungeon-ish areas all over again to get whatever it was. I forget if it was a metal flower or access point or whatever else there was. Figurine. It did feel a little weird too, because it is pretty self-guided when you're climbing. And there isn't just like a climb anything system like there is in Breath of the Wild, which I will say sometimes it is rewarding to find your way up a little structure without, finding the clearly climbable part, just sort of jumping and finding little perches you can just kind of land on and stay and get another jump off of. But yeah, I don't know. You just sort of hold in different directions, and eventually, even if you don't necessarily see the yellow thing right away, you'll get to where you need to go. I don't know. I do wish there was almost like some sort of, I don't know, like if you're not really seeing it right away, and or maybe you see something and that's not quite it. If there's, an animation, or maybe Alloy uses her grapple because she missed the next place you're supposed to climb, so she grapples back to where you were, but maybe you take a little damage or something like that. One thing I will say, though, is I really enjoyed the world itself. Like, I feel like I've discovered I like this sort of setting a lot. It reminds me a bit of Nier, where you've got, post-apocalyptic world. So you have like a lot of high-end technology and stuff being overtaken by nature and society sort of in a more primitive state, rebuilding itself, yet also having access to some of this advanced technology that came later. It's just a really fun theme to explore. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. It looks like the footage stuttered a little bit, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I haven't gotten it yet, but playing Forbidden West, it might be a little while, because the one complaint I will say with this game, and this might be more of a me problem, is, quick traveling and initially loading into the game was pretty slow, but I don't have an SSD. I believe I could run Forbidden West, but I might want to wait till I get some upgrades, which, may be a little while, but eventually I'll get there, and I hope it's a really good, fun experience like this one was. There's so much potential here, honestly. Especially if, they take, some things learned from Breath of the Wild and build off what they established themselves, and just all the different robots they can come up with to fight and places to explore. It's a good time. Like I said, this is footage of Frozen Wilds. I have played, a little more since this was recorded. In general, there's not really much to say. I will say that it is a pretty safe DLC. It's more of what you experienced in base game, which honestly is fine, because like I said, when the base game is that good, I'm not going to complain about more. I just feel like some of the DLC stuff I've played particularly recently, thinking of Just Cause in particular, where they really tried some different, more risky stuff. But like I said, both directions are fine. I think there's certainly some obscure stuff they could do here too for DLC if they really wanted to too. That I would almost like to see what they can do if they ever decide to go that direction, if that makes any sense. I actually just realized I was stupid too, because I turned off collectibles from my map, since I beat it all in base games, and I just kind of forgot the filter wasn't there, and I wasn't sure what was going on with the collectibles and Frozen Wilds. So yeah, like I said, I wasn't sure if I was going to be in the mood to do all the collectibles all over again, especially some of the upgrade stuff too, because it's like I already grinded through having to hunt some fish and rats, which aren't as easy to find. It's like, do I really want to do it again, especially if I'm not really using the item? But I don't know, when I progressed a little more and I'm getting closer to the end, I sort of warmed up to it. It was almost similar with base game when I saw how long it was going to be to load into quick travel, but then I don't know, I just kind of got used to it and just had, something in the background I can go back and forth on easily. So I'm not twiddling my fingers here for however long it takes. It's not like, I mean, there's worse out there, but it's like, it could be a solid minute or so. At least that's what it felt like. I don't know, maybe I'm over exaggerating and I'm just impatient. But yeah, hopefully I'll have an upgrade for Forbidden West so we don't have to deal with that whenever we get to it. But yeah, this game definitely more than playable, in my opinion, to modern standards, without, whatever they're doing with the remaster, remake, whatever. I feel like I brought it at the right time because I saw stuff about it, the original being delisted or the price raised because of the way they're sort of handling the remaster and, upgrades and stuff. Luckily, I literally got it on the Steam Summer Sale right before that all started, so I almost wonder if it's a partial strategic thing. They want you to feel pressure to buy some of their games on Steam and that. Like, I have a couple more on my wish list, and I don't know, it might not be that much longer before they decide to remaster Spider-Man again, or for the Ratchet and Clank remaster for Rift Apart, I think is the new one on Steam. Next, dude, I don't even think Spider-Man 2 is on here yet either, so yeah. Certainly a weird deal, but yeah, it's definitely more than playable without that upgrade. Not that that's, a shock or anything.